What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns with you after the big introductory press conference for Kevin Warren that I think people inside that building, Jahns, are hoping is the last introductory press conference they do for quite some time. If all goes well, that should be the case. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? You and we sat next to each other, go figure, Hoge Jahns in the Muggs Auditorium. We're not in there as much as we used to be. There used to be a lot more press conferences in there, and I think that's part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
Is that we've covered a few there. I think that we joked around the draft selection of Kyle Long was probably one of our wildest nights there. But
I missed the draft being in the auditorium.
The space?
Yeah.
With the more comfortable chairs.
With the big screens, and now there's more screens. They should put I don't know. They could be rolling tape of their players up there for us if they really wanted to.
Yeah, we were kidding because they used to have the special team stuff there. Remember, they're great.
Yeah,
like their point shirt, whatever. Dave Tope used to going way back now.
Yeah, I
used
missed
to have
that
for the Bears. But Phil Emery was introduced there. Mark Trestman. I vividly remember Mark Trestman being introduced there and turning around because there's a balcony up there not too many people know about. And Aaron Cromer, Jody Camillus, they're all sitting up there. I don't think Mel Tucker was there yet, but they're all up top looking down on Mark Trestman being introduced. But it's a long time ago, Adam Hoge, a long time ago.
Yes, and again, I think they're hoping that they have the people in place that are going to turn this thing around. And now part of that equation is Kevin Warren. What's going on? Thank you for being patient with this pod. I know we usually come out on Tuesday, but it didn't really make sense to do a podcast Tuesday morning right before all this what was happening at noon. And so we pushed it back a day so we could digest everything and also get all our work done, which you should be reading on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns, where you go. It's not just Jahns, it's Kevin Fishbain.
John Greenberg was there yesterday. Matt Fortuna was there.
Matt Fortuna, I read his piece last night. Good stuff from the Big Ten perspective of things, which I want to get into as well a little bit because I've had some conversations on that end. I think it's kind of a lingering question too. So we'll talk about that. We got a bunch of sound from Kevin Warren, and also make sure you read what I wrote. I was up late last night writing my newsletter, which is out in your inbox if you are a CHGO diehard. Hopefully you got that this morning, and you can also find it at allchgo.com. I kind of focused more on the Ryan Poles aspect of this, just the relationship there between Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles. I have optimism, Jahns, that it's going to work, that it's going to be a good pairing. But it definitely stood out to me yesterday that Kevin Warren did not shy away from talking about football. That's always been a sensitive subject in these press conferences in the past. You know, who's got final say? How much is Ted really involved? You know, they try to diminish how much they're actually involved in football decisions. But then Ryan Poles says, yeah, we meet before free agency. We meet before the NFL draft. And quite frankly, that's how it should be. That's how NFL organizations work. What stands out to me is that, at least in my opinion, I think the guy they have now in that position, and Kevin Warren's probably more qualified than anyone has in a long time to sort of oversee the football department. And when I say that, I don't mean help make decisions, but just be that checks and balances above the GM. And it just really stood out to me, not only in the press conference, but also in my conversation later, which we had on CHGO yesterday with Kevin Warren. He called it a marriage with Ryan Poles. And that when it comes to final say, they're going to hash it out and get together and work it out. That really stood out to me yesterday.
I think, a lot of this conversation, at least in Chicago, always shifts to this portrait of Ted Phillips being like this behind-the-scenes villain. You know, he's pulling the strings. Have you, right? I feel like I've said this repeatedly on this podcast. He's always been like that sounding board. He has used that word himself multiple times to describe his place there. And I understand there's some stories from the past, but at least in my term covering the Bears, his general managers had full power. Phil Emery created quite the team. just saying. And I know that that's part of it, checks and balances, but he was the football boss. Ryan Pace made some bold decisions. It was like the defining characteristic of his tenure here. Trading for Mitch Trubisky, as bold as can be. He was the sounding board for all that. So I think it could be difficult for some fans to get over that idea of the president being some behind the scenes villain. I don't know how much of that really is true, at least in my tenure covering the team, but it just feels different with Kevin Warren, at least from the outset, right? Like that press conference felt different in every single capacity of everything I've ever covered with this team.
Yes.
I don't think I'm overblowing that too. The energy.
No.
The answers.
Even compared to George getting back up there and then taking questions after Kevin spoke.
Yes.
You know, that contrast was obvious.
The length, the passion, the excitement, like the natural charisma of Kevin Warren all came through. I've heard great things about him from those who have worked from him, but just from a coverage standpoint, I think, you know, you got that Ted Phillips role there. I'm sure people are commenting on YouTube already right now, but just from as far as introductory press conferences go, the whole passion of the day felt different for the Chicago Bears.
We got a bunch of sound to play from Kevin Warren, and one of them has to do with, you know, how the day-to-day is going to work with Ryan Poles and, you know, this concept of who his final say. I think this question was from Courtney Cronin, and here's what Kevin Warren had to say about that.
Ryan will be reporting to you, but what will you be doing from a football operations standpoint?
Courtney, that's a great question. One of the things I've learned is when you build a championship culture, the questions and the ideal and the thought process of who has the final say and all that really becomes irrelevant, because at the end of the day, when we come out of whatever room we're in, we have the common goal. And the common goal is to bring championships here. And so I think my goal, I know every day, whether it's football, whether it's business, whether it's stadium, whether it's league matters, whether it's dealing with ownership, is to make sure that we're prepared, we're organized, we're detailed, we're methodical, and I'm there as a resource. And as I say, honestly, I always look up, I mean, because I'm a very boring person. This is all that I do. You know, I don't have any hobbies. My wife's been telling me for years, you need to get hobbies. She finally stopped telling me that a couple of years ago. She recognizes it's my family and it's my work. And this is not even work to me anymore. This is a unique situation. And so because of that, I'm able to come with no ego to be able to say, who do I know? Who do I know about someone? What can I bring to help the football operations to bring us a championship? Coach Dick Vermeil said something to me during our quest in St. Louis for a Super Bowl. Our first year, we were 5-11. Second year, we were 4-12. Last year, 16-3, our Super Bowl year. Two things he said a lot of things, but really resonate with me. The second year, he said to me, he said, once people in the building realize that not if, but when we win the Super Bowl, that all of our rings are going to look the same, that they'll put their egos to the side. And it was interesting at the ring ceremony. It was right. My Super Bowl ring looked just like Kurt Warner's. It looks like just like Marshall Faulk's, Orlando Pace, and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce. It looked the same. And so that's one thing. The other thing that he said is you got to recognize that when you build a house, you build the basement first. So although you drive by a house and you don't see any progress upon land, that doesn't mean the building is not going on. And so I think with that and that common goal that Matt and Ryan and George and everyone in this organization will have, it will be a very healthy environment. We won't agree on everything, but we'll work together because we have a common goal of making sure that we bring championships to this franchise.
Johns, it also seemed notable to me that when we talked to Ryan Poles off to the side, he seemed genuinely appreciative that he was brought into the process towards the end once they got narrowed down to the finalists, and also genuinely optimistic that this is going to be a good fit with Kevin Warren. He said something that at first I kind of questioned, and then the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I get where he's coming from. And that was like, he specifically said his knowledge and with these Big Ten players is an example of something that could be an asset. You know, like even in the draft room as they're talking about prospects. And the reason I kind of questioned it at first was like, okay, but how long is that going to last? Like 2 years from now, that's going to be irrelevant because he's no longer the Big Ten commissioner. But when we talk about this, like who has the say over football decisions conversation, which seems to be an endless topic with the Chicago Bears, I guess you can either look at it from two standpoints. One is, all right, the football guy should be the football guy, and he should have control over the football stuff. And Ted Phillips should have nothing to do with it. And I get that. But I think we should also learn from the Phil Emery days and Ryan Pace's biggest decision with the quarterback that it probably doesn't hurt to have somebody above that to provide a little bit of oversight. And Kevin Warren wasn't the commissioner at the time of, when Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes and Mitch Trubisky were all in college, but just sort of as a hypothetical, if he's the president at that point and he had seen those players play in college, could he have potentially been like, hey, wait a minute. You sure you want to do this? What about this? What about the fact that Deshaun Watson was an absolute beast in the championship games? You know what I mean? Because this is Kevin Warren who's attended these things, who's been at these things. I'm just coming up with one example here where I get what Ryan Poles is talking about from that standpoint.
I think you get a sense from Ryan Poles' press conference, which immediately happened after Kevin Warren's press conference, is that there's an excitement there from Ryan Poles. And I think it's easy to understand why. I think it's partly because of where Ryan Poles came from. The word collaboration is probably overused. I understand that word became the Bears buzzword like the last year of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. But I think Ryan Poles really lived it down in Kansas City. That's like how he came up when you had Andy Reid, Brett Veach, John Dorsey, you had Chris Ballard there. A lot of strong-minded individuals making football decisions, and you had maybe actual collaboration. I think, at least in our experience coming here, I don't know if you got that with Phil Emery. I don't think you got that, at least towards the end with Ryan Pace, because John Fox wasn't all in for him. John Fox was just here. You didn't have that sense of true collaboration. That's why he became a buzzword with Matt Nagy. And at that point, Mr. Trubisky was on the roster. So that's a layer of discussion. But just the vibe you get from hearing Ryan Poles talk about Kevin Warren, that should be reason for optimism that this could work. And the experiences they're different than Ted Phillips. Can we point that out as well? I mean, the guy I just mentioned, he has a Super Bowl ring from the greatest show on turf.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Dick Vermeil, the Bears passed out this 3-page sheet of like endorsements, which was new, by the way, of Kevin Warren. And in there's Dick Vermeil.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put him on page 3, by the way. I maybe move him with page 1, but.
Well, maybe it was alphabetical order. I don't know. But,
it wasn't actually.
I don't know. Maybe it was Vermeil, V, right? At the same time, you had the CEO of Sleep Number on there.
Yeah. Well, let's put Dick Vermeil above Sleep Number person.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Sleep Number's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, LeBron James is shouting him out on Twitter. Like, this is LeBron James ain't, all due respect to Ted Phillips, LeBron James not shouting out Ted Phillips, right? Like, it's a different. One person I talked to yesterday, connected to the NFL, was somewhat shocked, actually, that this move happened, because basically the way it was worded was, this isn't a very McCaskey move. Like, this is big time.
Yeah.
And it definitely has the feel of like handing it over. Like, here you go, Kevin. This is your baby now. And as I put in my newsletter this morning, like, this, to me, this is the Kevin Warren Ryan Poles show from this point. I think George probably fades into the background just a little bit, not necessarily in terms of his job responsibilities, but just, let them cook, right? Let them go to work.
Can we play the Fields clip? Because I think I want to say the next most important person in the franchise needs to be discussed, but I probably would argue he's the first. But let's play what Kevin Warren had to play about Justin Fields real quick.
I'm curious about your relationship with him now and just your thoughts on what you've seen from him in the NFL.
I'll say this. If I had been in the Big Ten at that time, I would have done the same thing. And what that told me about Justin is he's passionate. And now my whole goal was trying to keep players safe. I appreciated him to be able to take that leadership role. So I was ecstatic. I called him on draft day. I was ecstatic when he got drafted by the Bears, because that's what you need from a leadership standpoint. But I have a strong personal relationship, with him. He's talented. He's a leader. I love this passion. I would have been the same way of being able to do it. Interestingly enough, I've only been to one game in Minnesota since I left. In 2019, I was in Minnesota for some meetings, and it was the weekend that the Bears were playing. And so I actually went to the game and went into the locker room to say hello to Justin and a lot of our Big Ten folks, Riley Reif and Trevor Siemian, and just to be able to go to say hello. But I have the greatest amount of respect for him, because I know he's going to do everything he possibly can with the talent that he has to be a leader, and he wants to win championships. So I take it as a comment. Those are the people that I want, because if someone was not upset about playing, then I really would be concerned, because I know if I was in the Big Ten and someone did what I did, yeah, I would have led a revolt to be able to play, because that's how passionate I was, to take advantage of it. So I think that's great.
Well, why didn't you say hello to Jack Sanborn though? Come on, man.
Yeah, come on.
Some respect.
I'm totally prepared for that question. But okay, Wisconsin guy, hold on a second there. Slow down. Slow down. He's totally prepared for that question. Totally
I'm curious about your relationship.
Yes,
totally prepared.
Good question from Michelle Steele.
But you gotta love the answer, right?
That almost didn't get asked, by the way. I think that was the last question.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us, at least for me, I was waiting for the smaller group setting.
Yeah, me too.
Just so you know, with how these press conference days work with the Bears, they have the 30 minutes up there. Then there's a lot of smaller groups. That was such a great answer. And then it wasn't a coincidence to me that the first picture shared on social media of Kevin Warren walking around the facility was him just happening to come across Justin Fields working out.
Yeah.
Big smile on Justin Fields' face. They're about to embrace and a hug. That felt notable as well, man.
Well, didn't that go viral last year too? Wasn't there a video of Poles walking into the locker room or weight room or something, hugging Justin?
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yeah. If you want to go even further, I think there's one of Trubisky and Nagy.
Yeah.
But these two, but this was a story going, how's Justin Fields going to feel about Kevin Warren? Wasn't that a concern that people raised because of what happened in the pandemic season?
Actually, I want to give credit to everyone involved in this. I think that whole thing has been handled extremely well. It was definitely a story.
Yeah.
And definitely a question that was an interesting connection, right? Because there was no doubt that it's all well documented and reported. Yeah. What happened during COVID and Justin Fields' role in all that. And also, to Kevin Warren's credit, he clearly understands it's just a kid who wants to play ball.
Yeah. I think some folks make it out like the season didn't actually happen. There was actually a season. I know it was shorter, 6 games.
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but did Northwestern not play in the Big Ten championship game that year?
Yeah, they did against Justin Fields.
Yes. Didn't Justin play in the college football playoffs? Didn't he have an amazing game against Clemson?
Yeah.
Or Alabama? One or the other.
No, it was against Clemson.
You get my point.
He was playing hurt. He had the ribs thing, and he balled out. So, dude, Kevin Warren called him on draft day when he got drafted by the Bears. So, yeah, it's not a nothing story, because it is a story, but it's a good story, I think. So, what else?
How about why did Kevin Warren leave the Big Ten?
Yeah, that's good too. And then we got to get some of the stadium talk as well. But, this is a lingering question that I have a little bit of insight on as well. But, it's an interesting question. Why would you leave one of the most powerful jobs in sports to come to the Bears?
My parents raised me And fortunately, I would say if I had to think of one of the main thing that my dad would always say to us and really just put his thumb on us constantly, and my mother, would be always leave a situation demonstrably better than it was when you got there. So that was always on my mind. My dad always talked about that. And he would say, when I would call him about different opportunities in job, he would say, from the day you walked in the door till now, is it better? I said, yes. He said, is it demonstratively better? Yes. He goes, okay, well, then you can go on to the next job. And I just felt in 40 months there, for us to be able to come in and handle the pandemic in a manner that I thought kept our student athletes healthy and safe, for us to be a leader in social justice initiatives, for us to be a leader in the mental health space, for us to be able to set records from a television network creativity standpoint, and to be able to expand with USC and UCLA. I would say I left the Big Ten in a demonstrably better position. And so I'm a big believer. I wouldn't even feel good with myself if I just kind of stayed there and let that kind of drain out over the next year and say, okay, it's time to go. I just felt it was the right time. I had done what I was called there to be able to do. And I think that's, different about me. I go by like a calling. And this is bigger than sports to me. This is really about life. This is where God wants me to be. And I just felt that I had made the impact at the Big Ten at that point in time. It's in a phenomenal position, and someone else should be afforded that opportunity to recognize their dreams. And to be blessed to have the Chicago Bears at this point in time with the challenges that they're, facing, but the huge opportunities and the work that it's going to take, it was time to be able to go. So I feel incredibly well with our body of work at the Big Ten. There's phenomenal people, still have great relationships. I'm so grateful to the Big Ten staff and our chancellors and presidents. They supported me to be able to do it. But, I go by in my spirit, and my spirit from the first time I sit down with George and Ted, like it was right in my spirit. And I told Greta, I said, if my spirit continually feels this way, and the opportunity is presented, and they were interviewing me as much as I was interviewing them. But if my spirit feels that way, I know our journey will be blessed together, and that's what caused me to come here.
It also helps when the Bears really want you and the Big Ten doesn't necessarily fight for you to stay, right? Which is the reality of the situation. That's been reported by Pete Thamel, Matt Fortuna, that the bottom line is when this leaks out a few weeks ago, there could have been a big push from the conference to re-up his contract to
Didn't he have like a year and a half still left?
Yeah, that's my understanding. That he was early in year 3 of a 5-year contract with the Big Ten. So, and here's a couple things that I just think that and I've said this in a couple places now, when you're as ambitious and big idea as Kevin Warren clearly is, you guys all heard in his press conference yesterday, like if you're working in a smaller setting with like one organization, as he was with the Vikings, right? You can see how that can trickle down and lead to success. When you're trying to manage 14 different Big Ten universities and all these power brokers from all these different places that technically you're working for too, right? Things like having a 7 a.m. meeting every single morning during the pandemic can wear on people, right? And so almost every person I've talked to, even who have some that have been like, yeah, he's a lot to work with, to work for, have also said, this is a great job for him. This is a great fit for him. He's going to do really well with the Bears because he's already done it with the Vikings. And oh, by the way, the stadium is probably the biggest driving force behind all this. And he could not have aced that more than he did with the Minnesota Vikings.
The Bears have expanded their staff in different departments over the years. They've expanded Hallis Hall. They've actually done a lot of things to modernize their thinking, believe it or not, over the past, I'd say 5 to 10 years with Ted Phillips and George McCaskey working together. I want to give them credit for that. Kevin Warren is like the next step of that. Like it's a jolt of like incessant energy. Like you could feel that from Kevin Warren in his news conference. Like that's going to be every day. He's got that drive. He's got that ambition. And I think the Bears at this point, where they are, with this stadium coming up, I know we're about to play some clips on that. And with this, like, it's just crazy how things have, like, oddly aligned for, like, excitement. I think Kevin Warren is a part of this. You got this new stadium project in Arlington Park. You have the first overall pick. You got Justin Fields. You have Ryan Poles, this young, promising general manager. And you got Matt Eberflus, who, despite the record, did some pretty good things culture-wise. I know culture, I get it. It's not wins and losses, but it's there. Like, there's a lot of things to be excited about in terms of the future, and I think Kevin Warren is the next step of this. It's kind of crazy how things have kind of aligned for the Bears in this sense, because things have never really aligned for the Bears, really, ever.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
No, it usually doesn't, but maybe they were due. But at the same time, I'm glad you said what you said about George and Ted, because I do agree that they, you know, they've been shifting towards more of this modernization even before the Kevin Warren hire, and quite frankly, get credit for this hire.
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of laughing when Ted got asked, you know, what are your accomplishments? What are you proud of? And he's like, Soldier Field, financials, and hiring my replacement. Like, and that's not how he worded it, but those are the three things he listed. And it's like, well, this Kevin Warren hire might be the best move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you still get credit for that, even if that's your last thing going out the door. I think that a couple things happened. I mean, even before 2019, the Bears had already invested in House Hall, giving, you know, the players what they need, the facilities. But I also think that there was somewhat of a wake-up call, because I really, truly believe they thought they had the answer with Pace and Nagy, especially after that 2018 season. And then it all deteriorated really quickly, which is probably a good lesson for all of us, too, as we go down this road. But I think in some ways that also served as a wake-up call that, all right, if we're ever going to do all this hiring and firing again, something's got to change. So I don't know if that influenced Ted's decision or the timing of him retiring, but there's definitely a different type of thinking that led to, all right, let's go big. And they landed Kevin Warren. It's pretty impressive.
I want to say that even going back to like the Emery Trestman era, like you started to see the shift in the McCaskey Phillips approach to things. And I know it's weird to hear reporters give credit to them, because look, the wins and losses are what they are. Even Ted Phillips himself, biggest regret of his tenure, 45 quarterbacks. I don't know if that's the exact number, but it ain't good either way. Not good at all.
Carm tried to count it yesterday. I think he got the 42, but he's also, you know, he's not the greatest at math, so I'm not sure if that's.
He's like John.
Maybe we should trust the accountant over Mark Carman on that one. Not sure.
I was a math major. I wasn't actually,
but you've seen them in years past step out of their comfort zones. I think one great example of that for George McCaskey is his willingness to listen to Ryan Pace to bring training camp to Hallis Hall, because we know how much he liked having the interactions in the setting of Bourbonnais. He loved that setting. It's what he grew up with, like that type of training camp setting. So listen to Ryan Pace to bring it to Hallis Hall. So you saw a shift, at least an openness to new ideas from George McCaskey and Ted Phillips. And let me say something before we get to the stadium stuff. This search, I know the Bears didn't want to say a lot about it. 20 candidates. I could tell you there was 8 that came to Hallis Hall, and there was only a couple finalists. But it really was international. I think I said this in a previous podcast. Like professional soccer executives in England, right? NBA, other NFL execs, other college contacts, some from Major League Baseball. They really did cast a big net. And a lot of people were interested in their job, or this Bears job. It's something. Like, giving them credit for such a search is, I think it has its limits, but I think it's in line with the approach George McCaskey has taken with maybe expanding what the Bears should be. Does that make sense? No?
Yeah, no, it does.
You smiled there for a second.
Well,
Was I
I
rambling
laugh.
too much?
No. I laugh at the idea that, like, they paid a search firm. Search firms are kind of funny. Like, I get the point, and I get how they help vet candidates, and I'm sure those, especially those international candidates, whoever they were, that helped. But, like, at the end of the day, they still hired the most obvious candidate who doesn't even need to move.
Yeah.
Who lives downtown. Like,
works in Rosemont.
Yeah. I hope they learned some things through that, and got some good thoughts and ideas from
sometimes
England.
The best answer sometimes right in front of you, is it not?
Right. No. And I'm not ripping them at all. They should do that, and I'm glad it was an exhaustive search like that.
I'm sure they had a lot of good ideas too, just in terms of like the structure of their team, success from other organizations in terms of like information gathering.
Yeah.
Good for George.
It's like Michigan hiring a search firm to hire Jim Harbaugh. Okay, that one seems.
And don't
obvious,
like we're joking around like because they use Nolan Partners, this huge search firm for like sports executives, but there's like a reason these places exist, because teams and employers pay them because they need the help with things.
Yeah,
it's true. A lot of people use them. A lot of organizations use Nolan Partners and other such search firms.
Hey, I think it's a great job, right? You're gonna pay me $1 million to come up with a list of names and land on Kevin Warren. What a great gig. It's great if you can get it. Good for them. I'm just having fun. No,
Funny guy.
It's look, at the end of the day, too, we could talk about the relationship with Poles, Fields, why he left the Big Ten. All that stuff matters, but we also shouldn't overlook this too much. Like, if you're going to take the list from the search firm and your biggest project that's ahead of you is stadium, who's at the top of that list, right? And Kevin Warren's involvement in US Bank Stadium is by far the biggest reason to me why this was great timing. Talk about things falling into place for the Bears. And the most important thing ahead of him. So here's what he had to say about Arlington Park and his involvement and excitement about that project.
Yeah, because I'm a, stadium nerd, I would say. Even when I had heard about the Arlington Park opportunity, I drove out there one day on my own just to kind of look around. Again, I always look at what are the assets on the chessboard. And the unique thing about Arlington, it has some different unique factors. One is the space. You don't get many times to have over 300 acres, close to the city. And so there's some unique aspects. I know our focus will be to making sure that we close on the land. And again, I just want to, like I said early on, be very methodical to make sure that we get that process done first and see what happens next. But it is a very attractive, unique stadium site.
Johns, you and I have talked a lot on this podcast about how much we love US Bank Stadium. But it also stood out to me, too, that Ted answered a question that George did not when I tried to ask him. Yeah, look.
You got the patented dry humor of George McCaskey.
Look, it's hard to get George
and under budget.
It's hard to get George to compliment an NFC North rival. I get it. So inside him always is his Bears fandom. I almost preface the question with that. George, I know at the risk of asking you to compliment the Vikings, what do you like about US Bank Stadium? And his only answer was, well, Kevin said it was on time and under budget. So there's that. But Ted said specifically, which got me really excited, that he likes how there's light that comes in and open air. And that I know, I'd encourage you to check out my conversation with Kevin Warren. It's on YouTube under the CHGO channel. I asked him, he talked about all the details, right? How detail oriented they were with the stadium, the year of planning before they even put a shovel in the ground. What were the things that you're most proud of from those details? And he talked specifically about how they took input from everyone, whether it was fans, alumni. He was big on the alumni, asking former players who played at the Metrodome, yo, what was wrong with that stadium? What do we need here? How do we fix this? The media. Maybe we need to do a whole podcast, John, just on our list of demands for the new stadium. You know, can we get a candy bar in the press box, right?
Mine would be actually a plaque that labels it the hot dog laden press box.
That would be great. You know,
We
that's
all
the
like
detail.
jokes here.
It's the details, right?
Right over the doorway, hot dog laden press box.
Yeah, it just has me excited, you know, that things like forgetting to build the press box won't happen.
If you don't know, Soldier Field's press box were like former suites.
Yeah, they just like, oh, guess we're just gonna have to turn 20 seats or suites into a press conference, which probably, God, I just picture the meeting with Kevin Warren where they have, Kevin, we forgot to build the press box, and we're have to take 20 suites that can bring in, you know, a few $1 million in revenue, turn it into a hot dog laden press box.
Stick the guys in the Tribune sometimes in there. They're going to rip us anyway.
You know, like the point being, like I have an abnormally high amount of confidence that they're going to get this right in a city that you and I lived in our entire lives, where the one thing we don't do well is stadiums.
Yeah. He mentioned in our small group setting, like even like the angle of the stadium was discussed, like in the blocks there, and how they actually moved it a bit, you know, with the purpose of the light, to get more light to come into the stadium, which I thought was fascinating, like in terms of like attention to detail, like holy moly. Like that's something, like including the weather in this conversation, the weather that changes by season. It's impressive.
He also mentioned at one point, forgetting which, there's so many things that got said today, but yesterday, I know he mentioned at one point that it's got to be a comfortable experience for the fans. And every time
from like the 1-year-old to the 100-year-old, did he use that saying with you?
Yeah. I don't know.
Like
Again, I don't remember which I don't remember which interview, but the point being is just like, this is a long-standing rant I've been on, I know, but like this idea of bear weather, when we sit in that press box, Johns, and we look down at those people that are freezing and their beer's literally turning into ice, and I'm like, I get it. It's nostalgic, but you know what's better? Like just being comfortable. But here's an honest battle that they're dealing with right now. It's more comfortable right now to sit on your couch with multiple different TVs with Red Zone on and enjoy the experience like that. And you have to battle that now. How do you make it a better experience than that? And I think that that's something that he's going to truly attack here with this, with not only the stadium, but what's around it too. That's what matters. Making it not only comfortable, but convenient, as it could possibly be in Arlington Park.
He discussed like the experiences within the same experience, right? Where like this experience on the south end zone and like, you know, on the second level will be different than the field level suites, right? It's different experiences within the same shared experience of attending a football game. And I think what makes like the stadium nerd and Kevin Warren even more excited is that property is so enormous in Arlington Park, where it's not just like the stadium and a few outdoor amenities in a parking lot. It's in a whole entertainment district where you could add, and it's the addition of parks and waters and lakes and lagoons and maybe boats on those lagoons or little canoes, something, you know what I'm talking about, like duck boats. Something.
Got to get the duck boats in there.
It's different. Swan boats.
John Greenberg's loving this part of the press or podcast. With the what were the renderings that they had, like the little gondolas or whatever, and the paddle boats.
I'm trying to remember what they were. Were they battle boats?
There was something like that.
Paddle boats.
There. And I was like, oh, who's on a paddle boat on game day?
But that's what it's beyond game day. That's what they're talking about. Like,
I
the Bears
know.
want to host a lot of different things.
I still think they need to have a little mini stadium in there for high school football games.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So there's an idea for you, Kevin. Because wouldn't it be cool if like state championship games were played in more intimate settings, where like all the fans are going nuts and it's
At least 6A through 8A with all the North Illinois teams.
be awesome.
How about
But-
a
yeah.
Bears museum? Want something that's open year round?
Packers have that type of stuff.
Yeah. The House Hall
what-
itself is like a functioning museum with all the stuff they have around it.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of things that, and again, I don't know that all that can be figured out if you're just back at Soldier Field.
No. The Bears want their own place.
All right. Any other final thoughts from yesterday?
No, just it felt different from like 2 minutes into it. Like as soon as he started talking, like, oh, this is different. And you love the energy. The passion is there. You heard some of his experiences with stadiums and with his football experience, and it just felt different than any other press conference I've covered in that setting of Muggs Auditorium. And most of them don't usually pan out well, but the energy, the excitement level, the answers, the length of answers all felt different than my previous experiences covering this team.
Yeah, it brought back some memories of, because as I think we brought it with Matt Fortuna, I happened to be at that press conference when he took the Big Ten job, and he had that same energy. But the difference was like nobody was there. It was so weird.
Or reporters.
They
right?
rushed the presser. Like Jim Delaney wasn't even there. You should read Matt's column that he wrote yesterday. He detailed some of that in his own opinion, how different it felt. There was an audience, right? Like there was just more people that were there and even outside of House Hall watching on the streams and listening to podcasts like this to find out what Kevin Warren. You understand why there was interest in this job. The Bears are just big. It's a big job, and I think there's an understandable amount of confidence in what Kevin Warren can do. Even if there's some eye rolls along the way, that it's all going to be a really, really good
Well,
thing.
it's Chicago, of course, there's going
Yeah.
to be eye rolls and complaints, but
Yeah.
you can see why the job was appealing to him.
So, at the same time, trying not to get too out over my skis because it's just like you alluded to earlier, like things just don't align for the Bears. Why is this happening? Why do,
Why is this happening?
You know what I real quick before we got here, one of my favorite things in my interview with him yesterday was I wanted to get at, like, just have you ever been in a situation when you're with the Vikings where you have this much like cap flexibility and just all this opportunity? And I prefaced the question by being like, I know never had the number one pick when you were there because they just didn't. That wasn't really what I was asking about. But he goes, yeah, but we had the number one pick in St. Louis. We drafted Orlando Pace. Oh, yeah, just a future Hall of Famer. No big deal.
Yeah. A lot of future Hall of Famers in that Rams team.
He just kind of he has an answer for everything, right? It's like, oh, what's your stadium qualification? Oh, you just built the greatest stadium in America. Oh, who'd you take with number one overall pick? Oh, just like one of the best left tackles to ever play.
Even his like analogy that he got from like Dick Vermeil about, when you look at a house, you build the basement first.
Yeah.
It may not look like building, but it's happening. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's happening here, isn't it?
Right. That's
The
kind of what
Bears are
happened the last year.
The Bears are in the basement. They got the first pick. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
That's actually how I asked him that question. I go, so how's the basement look?
Very good.
You did a good answer. So
You're
check it out.
clever. You're good at this.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No,
Think about a
not-
career, maybe.
No. Probably not.
Yeah. Anyway, you could a lot of more coverage to check out. So all those places, allchgo.com, CHGO YouTube channel, obviously on The Athletic. Got you covered everywhere. Theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. You should be subscribed to both. We also have, if you're interested, a happy hour tonight, a virtual happy hour for the CHGO diehards. Maybe someday we'll get Johns to jump in there.
Maybe
He might be feeding a baby at the same
not tonight.
time.
We got basketball tonight.
Ooh. What day is it? I have basketball today too? Well, I don't, but I returned to the basketball court the other day, Johns.
How are your thighs?
I've never been in so much pain in my life. It's a good pain, though. It feels like I accomplished something. But
The closer to 40, I'm not as athletic as I used to be, Payne.
it's like when I was 27, I could play 7 games of basketball and feel fine the next day.
And probably drink 12 beers afterwards.
Now I'm 36 and it's Wednesday. I played Sunday. Why do my ankles still hurt the way they do?
It's still sore.
Oh my goodness. But when you don't play ball for 3 years, that's probably how it works. I gotta go. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone waiting for this podcast an extra day. We're gonna be back tomorrow though. We still got some playoff picks to make. I think we're gonna do a Q&A. So any questions you want to have for tomorrow's pod, send them along to us on Twitter. We'll take the best ones. We'll do a little Q&A pod with you guys, and then talk about the games that are coming up this weekend. The divisional round of the NFL playoffs should be a lot of fun. Follow us on Twitter. Read us, obviousshirts.com. All the merch is up there. Go check it out, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.
See ya.